This month's webinar is helping your artists plan for 2021. We're going to kind of go through 3 main topics. The first one of which is just going to be kind of like artist side of ZAPP. What tools are they going to need and what is it going to look like for them? The second one is going to be planning a transparent application. And the third one is going to be communicating with your artist throughout the season, depending on how it goes with the pandemic and everything. We're going to start out on the artist side of ZAPP. And the first tool that artists may need is favoriting an event. So this is going to be particularly useful if you are an event that is rolling over your invited and confirmed artists into 2021, and you're not ready to fully start that process now where they apply and reserve their booths and everything like that, but they still want to prepare for it. So how they can do that is essentially favoriting your 2020 event before your 2020 event is up on ZAPP. So if I wanted to do that with, say, this very first event that came up, which is 16th Street Fair, I would just favorite this event, and then it would show in this favorited events only tab. Oh, by the way, to favorite an event, you need to be logged into ZAPP, and they need to be on the Apply to Shows page or the Events List page, one of the listing pages. And then they'll be able to show favorite events only. This is really useful for them because it rolls over year to year. So say if they favorited your event, years ago in 2010 or something, if they never unfavorited your event, they're still seeing your application show up every time that they filter their results to show favorite events only. And so that's going to be the way that they can keep track of the events that they anticipate applying to in 2021, particularly if they're rolling over their fees and they want to remember to apply to those events. Second one is one of our most commonly used tools in 2021, which is, again, for rolling over artists into that event. You will need to provide them with a coupon code to apply for free. So this is a scenario in which you are having your invited artists apply again in 2021, but they're going to be invited in that year and they don't need to pay any fees. We got a question about this in the sign up for the webinar. The question was, for rolling over artists, rather than giving a booth refund, they've rolled them over, what do you suggest is the best way to make them apply again without having to pay the application fee or the booth fee? So the option that we're going to use is the coupon code option. Artists need to apply again and accept your terms and conditions in 2021. So that's kind of the main thing that prevents us from just rolling over your artists, changing your event 2020 to 2021. They need to accept the terms and conditions for which they're applying to your event and spending money if they will be spending money on that event. Accepting the terms and conditions are important there as well. We will have an upcoming enhancement that's going to be called invitational only events. So if, for example, you have your event fully set up, once this enhancement goes live, you will essentially be able to provide a code for those artists to access your application. They'll be able to apply. You can collect images. You can collect limited questions. You can collect any questions you want, answers to any questions you want, of course. But they will need a code to access your application. So you can prevent artists who, say, are not invited in 2021 or waitlist or, whatever status is you're rolling over. You can prevent them from applying by using that invitational only event. But if you're going to be doing kind of a mix, so you've rolled over, say, 80% of your artists and you need 20% remaining, 20% new applicants, then you're going to want to use a coupon code. So I'll kind of walk through what using a coupon code is going to look like now. So I started this application right here. So this one is going to be for our Lilac demo then. And hit complete. As an artist, I'll go through, select all, complete the application as needed, add my images. And just going to boost that. Yeah. And then save and preview. Just as if I was normally applying, I would have filled out that application just as I normally would. And then I'm going to hit checkout. And then on this page, the application fee is automatically added to the cart, but if for whatever reason they don't see it in their cart and they're reaching out to you because they don't see it in their cart, they just need to add it. It'll be in this first section, which is products. They can jump right down to add coupons. And then in here, they'll be able to add a coupon. Basically, what will happen is once they add the coupon code, it will take away that fee entirely. If you want to know how to create coupon codes yourself, the way we can do that is we're going to come into the admin side of ZAPP. accidentally logged into the super admin side, but that's okay. Same process basically. So it's going to be events coupons. So basically once I pull up the event, I will see this discount code. So I've created one called 2020 Artist, and I can apply it to multiple fees. So if, for example, you also want to have them register for booth fees so that you know exactly what your inventory and quantity looks like, you can do that, and you can actually use the same coupon code. So mine is 2020 Artist. I have a maximum number of uses of 150 to prevent any artists who do not have the coupon code from using, because at least if I have a maximum coupon usage, then I will be able to know if they go over, and then it'll be easier to figure out what happens. But basically, I can apply this to anything I want. So I might also want to apply this to my early bird application fee and the application fee. Click update. So if you make the coupon for the application fee, later decide you also want it to apply to a different fee, you'll just want to check on that fee and click update. And then as an artist, I should be able to come over here. We're basically going to see like check out a free product. See, now I get the 100% off. And the payment step will be check out a free item. And once I click this, I will actually move into received. Just hit submit. And then you will have that artist in your received status for your event. And you can go ahead at that point and maybe tag them if you'd like, so that you know and you're able to filter by 2020 artists specifically. But that is going to be how coupons are used, and that is going to be your primary way to move artists from 2020 to 2021. And it's going to be a nice double check for you as well, just to make sure that the artists who are moving from 2020 to 2021 are sure that they're doing that, and so that you can keep in touch with them the whole time. The other thing an artist may need, depending on what questions you choose to ask, so if you're in this system where you might be asking for previous event information to make sure that they are an artist who was invited in 2021, one of the things you might ask for is what was your application ID in 2021, just so that you can verify it, because you'll be able to download any answers in customer questions that you ask. So if I'm an artist and an admin asks me to tell them the application ID in 2020, then I just need to go to my ZAPPlications page, which is the home page for any artist who has an account on ZAPP. And then there will be an application ID listed on every single application. They may have archived their events. So one of the other things to consider is if they can't find their application on the ZAPPlications page, they might just have to click over to this archived section, and then they'll have the application ID and any application information on this page as well. So if they're also looking for things like the payment receipts from 2020 so that they can make sure that they paid for that product at that time, and maybe they're trying to reconcile a couple things themselves specifically for your event, they'll be able to do that all on their ZAPPlications page, because that's where all of their information lives. And so those are the kind of the three main tools that artists will be using on the artist side of ZAPP for 2020. So the next section of our webinar is going to be planning a transparent prospectus. Really going to be essential no matter if your application was affected by COVID-19 or if it wasn't. It's still going to be an essential thing for you to consider, just because there are so many events that have been affected, and artists will be looking for additional information in 2020 so that they can know, or in 2021, so that they can know whether or not your event was impacted or not and how that impact took place. So to build a transparent prospectus, we recommend including the following. So on the event information tab, what you're going to want to include, mainly in this general information section, one of the things we always say you can include is kind of a list of important dates, just kind of a timeline that artists can expect your event to follow. So that's going to include an application open date, early bird and late fee deadlines, if you have them, application deadlines, particularly if you're going to have multiple late application periods. I know that some events in 2021 are going to be in this position where they essentially do a initial round of applications to get their past applicants in, and then they might reopen if necessary from there on out. So if you have that information, including it in this section will be useful. Results notification date. So we recently added a section, if you haven't seen it already, that's the notification date. If you are hosting a jury with one specific notification date, or if you have specific notification dates as your application cycle progresses, you can add this date here and update it as you go. Make sure you check on the display box so that artists can see it. If you're hosting more of a rolling jury, or maybe you don't know the exact dates, I would just say add it in your general timeline of events, so that artists know, okay, they don't have an exact notification date, but they always anticipate getting back to me within the month or within 2 weeks or by this date, with a caveat of it could be in that week rather than that specific date. So that's how you can include results notification depending on the type of jury or selection process that you're having. Accept invitation and purchase deadline should be included here, but it can also be included here just so that they know in advance, because that's something that shows up a little bit later. Event loaded and load out dates, one of those things we always kind of hear about. I've included ours down in the booth information, but you can include it in your general timeline of events as well, and just so that they know, is this a night load-in, is this a day load-in? That's not specific to 2021 and COVID, that's more of a sort of general recommendation. A communication and decision schedule, this is going to be particularly useful if you are a spring 2021 event. I know that there are some locations in the US that are already starting to cancel spring 2021 events, which is really unfortunate. This is mainly January and February, so I guess there's still like winter, early 2021. But if you're opening an event and you know that, you may be facing that down the line, if you have a specific decision date by which you'll know one way or the other, I would include it in there as well. So it's just a good thing to include if you have that information. If not, then you can just be like, if we're impacted by COVID, we'll be sure to keep you up to date as we go about. So, we'll be doing this as a whole industry. So hopefully as we go farther along, that'll just kind of become a common thing. If this progresses much further, hopefully it won't. But if it does, you can just include that information. And then of course, you'll want to include a refund policy. So you can include that, in your rules and regulations or in your general information. But we recommend including the following things in your refund policy. Specific and clear policies for all products artists may purchase. This includes your jury and application fee. Dates by which an artist who wishes to withdraw from your event can receive a full or partial refund. The manner in which artists should request a refund. The refund amount, reimbursement method, and time frame by which it will be delivered. A weather-specific policy for outdoor events. And then, of course, a policy for cancellations resulting from the pandemic or another national or global catastrophe. All fun stuff there, but it's good to include, and I definitely think artists will be looking for it in the future. You'll also want to make sure that you're including your jury details. So one of the most recent enhancements we made is we added this section, which is this event juried, yes or no? Regardless of what you answer that, the first 3 questions on the jury details page are required from here on out for every event that is listing an application on ZAPP. It's going to be the average number of applications you're going to receive in a year, the average number of artists you select from the jury to participate, and the average number of exempt artists who are invited to participate in the event. So there's just so many events with different policies in terms of rolling over artists or refunding all of their artists and who's invited in 2021. So we just made these required. If you're in a position where you don't have any exempt from jury artists, so this doesn't necessarily apply to you, you'll just want to put none. And so kind of like bonus thing that you can include in your application just to ensure that all the artists who apply are on the same page is going to be a custom question that use conditional logic. So I've talked about this in a couple of other webinars, but I wanted to bring it up here as well, because you can use custom questions to have your artists verify certain information. So for example, one of the things that I brought up when I was talking about how using the artist side of ZAPP is going to look in 2021 is answering questions with your application ID to verify that you were invited in 2020. The 2020 is a custom question that I created that was just a single select custom question. And so I created this question specifically to verify information from artists who applied in 2020. This question is specifically designed to be the preliminary question to a question with conditional logic that will only show to artists who say that they applied or maybe were invited or confirmed in 2020. It's a single set question, and I have 2 options, just yes or no. I want to make sure that it's required, and then I'll go ahead and update or save the question, one or the other. And then for 2020 verification, That's the second question I created that's a part of this group. And essentially, in this question, I created a text question that was also required that said, please enter your application ID from 2020. Application IDs can be found on the My ZAPPlication page. Another use for this type of question could be maybe enter your booth preference from 2020. You know, if you had booths and you promised the same booth spaces in 2021, could do this here. We say, hey, please enter your 2021 booth space or 2020 booth space required as well. And then I made it enabled conditional logic so that it would only show the question if the answer to our last question that we created, 2020, is yes. So that would mean that the artist had selected that yes, they were invited or confirmed to the 2020 event. And therefore, you can verify any information from those artists by using conditional logic and making sure that it only shows if the answer to that is yes. So it's very helpful if you're going to have a mix of applicants in 2021, in which some applicants did apply in 2020 and do have perks from the 2020 application, whether that's a rolled over booth fee or preferential juring, or their status is already decided, and you'll have some artists that are brand new in 2021. So that's kind of the end of building that super transparent application that will just help artists decide, understand whether or not they'll have a good chance of getting into your event, or what the exact system is going to be, given that COVID may continue to impact them and us. Our final section before we get to the questions that were asked in the sign-up is going to be just communicating with your artist. So this is going to help them plan after they apply to your event. So we recommend communicating frequently throughout the process, particularly if you have artists who are rolling from 2020 over to 2021. One of the cool new features we have is tagging artists and then emailing those tagged artists. So we've had tagging artists for a while, we've had emailing, the communication tool for a while, but you haven't been able to email just tagged applicants until recently. For example, what we could do is we have this 2020 artist tag that I've created, it's over here, and I can just tag any artists who come in as 2020 artists with that tag, so that it's really easy to communicate with them in the future. If you're currently managing a postponed or canceled or impacted event, you can also use tags there, and then you can use those tags to email those artists within your archived events when you need to. So to do that, you can go to Event Communication, and then we'll want to just choose the status that those artists are in. So, maybe as those artists rolled in from 2020, you've immediately moved them to invited, and then I'll want to include only tagged or flagged applicants. So I'm going to only include my 2020 artist tag, and then I'm just going to email them so that I can keep them up to date with event specific information. So maybe those artists, you want them to go and reserve or purchase their booth space, depending on whether or not you had artists who purchased booth spaces in 2020. So maybe we'll want to communicate with them that it's time to go purchase the booth space early, or if you could go reserve your booth space early, fee is $0 because you have this coupon code, or we've made this product so that you can purchase it. So moving away from, specific rolling over from 2020 to 2021, emails you may want to consider sending in 2021 are an application timeline, including a deadline, the jury process, and your decision date. And if you're making a decision about your event going forward or not because you think you may be impacted by the virus, I would communicate that decision date once you know it, or once you know that you may be impacted, and then follow up with a confirmation or an update on that date. Just make sure you're doing that follow-up on that date, because I know a lot of events make the decision to move on and then they don't necessarily communicate that with their artists on that date because they're like, oh, my event's happening, that's such a great thing. But just making sure you're communicating, even if your event's totally fine, saying like, yes, we plan to move on, encourages just clarity between you and your artist so that everybody's ready to move forward together. And then COVID update email, just including regulations your event may need to follow as per your state, as well as the normal guidelines you would have for load in, load out. So just remembering to keep COVID in mind in your communications, because when we're sort of looking through what artists are saying, we do see a lot of, like, oh, I wonder like how this is going to be impacted, or I wonder if this event is still moving forward. So kind of keeping COVID in mind, even as we move out of it. I know that mass gatherings in particular are going to still have regulations moving forward for at least the next couple of months. So that would just be something to include in your communications, particularly if you're in an area that ends up impacted early in 2021. So the first question I got was about artist refunds versus rolling over application money and incentives. So when it comes to cancellations, you're absolutely welcome to offer an option between a refund and rolling over funds to 2021. A lot of this webinar talks about how you can roll over those funds to 2021 and make sure that you have them noted and those artists have applied and are still planning to attend your 2021 event. In terms of best practices, though, we just say that you may want to offer the option of a refund for purchases for which the product was not received. So think booth purchases for canceled events or jury fees that were specifically for a jury. I know a lot of application and jury fees are non-refundable because they're about the whole process and they're about your application selection costs, just your pre-festival costs. But if your jury fee was specifically for the jury, then a jury fee that was paid in a jury that was not received would qualify under the you should probably offer a refund, as well as the option to roll over the fees. If you want to roll over your fees and you're trying to encourage artists to do so by offering them incentives, you might consider the following, which of course are dependent upon what you can offer. A percentage of the booth fee is one of the ones I've seen most common. Booth preference could be one. Or you could include things like inclusion in a newsletter to your patrons. You know, what do you already have within your promotional material that you could put your artists on to encourage them to roll over their fees? You know, can you give them preferential space on your website? Can you, create this section? I know a lot of people are already listing all of their artists on their website, but, if you have like specific mailers that you send out where you don't normally include your artists or you wouldn't include them because you're not having a 2020 event, then maybe offering that as the type of incentive to have them roll over their fee to 2021. We're promoting our 2021 event early. And so if you roll over your fee, you'll be promoted for longer. My second question is, are 2021 shows changing their timelines? It definitely varies between events. Some are keeping the same schedule, but others are delaying opening their applications until they have a good idea of how they will be moving forward and if they will be able to go as planned. The other main timeline piece we're seeing is the booth purchase deadline. Many shows are pushing that deadline back or adapting their payment structure so artists don't spend money until they feel confident the show is a go. This event asked, we are in Florida, which zones are the most effective to advertise using ZAPP? My answer to this is that it's going to vary based off of where your artists typically come from, but generally events stick to the region they're in. So in this case, that would be the South. South is also our biggest region on ZAPP, and Florida is our state with the highest number of artists to count. So, you can definitely stick to the area that you're in. Generally, though, when you're targeting people for advertising, I recommend basing your target around the results you want to see. So for example, if you need an overall app boost, you might focus on Florida and 3 other states nearby, but you'll send, all the medium categories and you won't filter by those at all. But if your goal is to get artists from a few specific medium categories where you don't normally see artists who, which you don't necessarily have a lot of artists that apply in those medium categories to your event, you might choose to focus your advertising efforts in the entire southern region of the US, but you'll focus specifically on those medium categories so you can get a broader range of people, but you're still staying pretty much in the same level. You're just focusing on a different thing. One's focusing on overall app boost and the other is focusing on a specific medium category or two. I'd like to hear how to best engage artists on social media and encourage them to share our social media to promote themselves as well as part of our show to our patrons. Probably the most obvious first tip we have to this is just make sure that you collect their handles and you tag them in your post if you're referencing or showing their work. I would also say absolutely create a hashtag for your event and encourage artists to use it so that patrons can click on the hashtag and essentially see a wall of posts that are just about your event and just your artist. Focus on a personal touch. So perhaps you have various artists take over your Instagram stories at various points throughout your event. Have them send you short videos of them talking about a specific piece in their collection or their studio, or have them post it themselves, tag your organization, and use your hashtag. Encourage commenting on each other's posts, both you to their posts and them to you, because engagement is prioritized on most social. It's just an algorithm thing. Create content for them that they can share across their channels. So if you do have branded content or if you have interesting content that they can share as well, you'll want to send it to them. It's just one less thing that they'll have to do because then all they need to do is schedule a post or plan to post it on that date rather than try and come up with something themselves. Ideally, when you're creating content for different social media channels, you'll want to customize it to each channel. I would encourage them to send dedicated newsletters to their list. Again, you can create some content for them. So if they're already sending a newsletter ahead of your event, you might create some content that they can include in that newsletter to their patrons, and then you can have a broader audience that way. And then make sure you and your artists are posting content in the days leading up to your event and in the days post your event, so you can catch anyone who might have missed it. This is going to be particularly useful if you have a virtual event that you're trying to plan right now. So you'll want to make sure you're doing a bit of a lead up with some teaser posts about your event, your main event via social media, and then just a little bit of an outro to your event, so that, you know, anybody who comes to your page after that can still sort of browse through and maybe still, you know, click through the artist pages and purchase artwork. So one of the things to consider might just be, who are your most social media savvy artists on your list, and pay attention to the hashtag and accounts they are following, and follow those as well, just to get some ideas flowing that are going to be specific to you and your artist. And then consider establishing discounts with artists. For example, if an artist sets up a discount for a purchase, and the discount could be your show name, and your show can then promote that to your patrons, and the artist can promote their discount and in turn the show to their patrons. And it just kind of creates this more symbiotic relationship where you're just kind of getting more people involved and more people aware of your event. And then our last little tip is, if possible, set up virtual chats with your artists and ask them to talk about their artistic process and mini studio tours. Depending on whether or not you're going to have an in-person event or a virtual event, this might look a little bit different. You might pre-record it, or you might find a way to kind of do like a Zoom call where people can join. If you're at your event and you don't need to pre-record it, I would say just do a live of some sort. So a Facebook Live, Instagram Live, that type of thing. That's all I have for the webinar today. And thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you again in the future.